Welcome to The Next Human. My name's Arav, and today I'm here with Jacob Flores, a grad student at UC Berkeley, concentrating in epidemiology. Thank you so much for being here today, Jacob.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Great, so let's get started. Um, the first question I just kind of want to ask is just kind of tell me what your life story is, I guess you could call it. Just like what are the steps you took, and I guess where did you start from, and I guess what took you to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I kind of feel like I've been in school my whole life. So I'm 23 years old and I grew up in the Central Valley of California. So every time I always have to tell people where I'm from. Oh, in between Bakersfield and Fresno, one of the small little towns right there. But aside from that, where I'm from has really shaped my trajectory in life. You know, what I want to do with my career, what I've at least tried to do in my time in college, and now why I'm even in grad school. And so after I graduated high school, I knew I really wanted to get out of where I was born just because I knew that there was a sense to learn something new, do something different. I didn't
Mhm.
end up going that far. I went to Davis for undergrad. So literally just moving to the North Valley, Sacramento area. And
Mm,
so at Davis, I got my Bachelor of Science in Neurobiology, Physiology, and Behavior.
mm,
I graduated in 2022. And during that time, we had a whole lot of ups and downs. It seems as though Davis was the college where everything was happening at the time. I remember my first year, there were literally fires, and then the next year there was some crime on campus, and then we had COVID, and so that never ending story just kept piling on. But there are a lot of good came out of bad situations. Of course, during my time in college, I ended up getting a full-time job,
mm,
worked for the public health department of my local hometown county. So I worked for the Tulare County Department of Public Health for nearly 3 years. And that started in 2019, where I started as a contact tracer for, I'm sorry, 2020. It started in 2020 because of COVID. And I was working in contact tracing, um, there was there was really hands-on effort back at home to address sort of this oncoming issue everyone experienced at the time. So that was a really good opportunity for me because I was able to do one, work where I wanted to in the future. I had this end goal of working back in Tulare County, and so I was able to establish those roots and connections, which was super meaningful. I was
mm.
also able to do valuable community work, especially at a young age. I think back now, and I'm like a 19-year-old, calling and contacting people who had.
Um, Sorry, Jacob, can you hear me? I think you cut out a bit, at least for me. Um, let's see. Can you hear me? Um, well, sorry, yeah, if you can't hear me, I'm sorry. I just can't. You're frozen on my screen right now. And I can't hear you.
Time. That was a great time to lose internet connection. Tell me what you last heard.
Okay, well, you're back. So that's great. Um,
Okay, sorry about that.
yeah, no worries.
Um, I'll continue off from where I
Yeah,
was, at
yeah.
least where I think. So aside from that, I worked in public health a long time in college, and it really pushed me into what graduate school would interest me in, what I would be interested in even in graduate school. And so I don't want to say I applied on a whim, but I sort of thought to myself, hey, there are some trajectories that I could have in life. One thing I've always been interested in is military. And so at the time I was really thinking to myself, what do I want to do after college? I
Mm,
know that I want to go career in medicine. Eventually that's going to be a long end goal, but realistically, I envision myself working within the public health sphere, community level work and individual level work. And so I was interested in two paths at the time of graduation, either military or graduate school. And then I told myself, you know what, I'm just going to apply for both of these things at the same time. And whichever I might hear back from first, that is the
mm,
trajectory I meant to take. And so, long story short, military was taking a long time to process some things. So I got into grad school at Berkeley first. And I thought that sounds like a really interesting path for me to take right now. And especially since all of the experience I had in it, I thought it'd be really meaningful. And so when I graduated in 2022, I started at Berkeley right away the next semester. And I'm still finishing up my degree now in epidemiology and biostatistics. And so a lot of the work that I've done so far has been really interesting because it's a lot of the stuff I wasn't available or able to do during COVID. A lot of hands-on practical skills, working in labs, getting research experience. Those are some of the things I value the most. And here at Berkeley now, I'm working as a graduate student researcher with one of my professors on a project in health policy related to tuberculosis. And then I'm also working as a graduate student instructor now called teaching assistants at Berkeley for an introductory biology course teaching lab skills to freshmen and sophomores. So it's a lot of fun. And I'm really happy with the way things turned out. And I'm really looking forward to, what happens in the future. I'm a kind of person who likes to take things as they come. My biggest things is like, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, as cliche as it sounds. I have no interest in being the youngest person in the room and also being the most intelligent. I'm more interested in being able to do what I want, and also being comfortable with where I am. Yeah, that was super long. I'm sorry for the internet cutting out.
No worries. Yeah, no, that was very detailed and comprehensive. So thank you for sharing that. I was just curious. So like you said, I think you were kind of always interested in doing medicine at some point.
Yeah. So when I started out my first year at Davis, I was like a kid with a whole lot of different things
Mhm.
going on. I was like, I took my first chemistry course. I remember I was like, wow, this is really interesting. Maybe I should switch my major to chemistry. And it only took the first exam for me to think, you know what, maybe chemistry is not supposed to be my major. It's gonna be one of those classes I just take for the credit and also because of the of how applicable it is in the future.
Mhm.
But I do eventually am planning on going into medicine, so that's one of the paths I'm on right now.
Yeah.
The reason why I get often asked this a lot is why I chose an MPH before. One, I'm going to start off with the most blatant reason. It's fully funded. I have had zero debt going into graduate school, and I've made a profit. So
Mm.
win-win on that. Um, 'Cause it's a really expensive degree if you just do it for the degree itself. And then also because I really want to use my degree after college and after medical school.
Mm.
I worked with the public health officer and the epidemiologist on a monthly basis whenever I was doing COVID work.
Yeah.
And it was really meaningful because of the work that they did, not only for, if they had a side task where they were a pediatrician at a hospital or something, but also where they were actually speaking to the public, communicating these messages of how can we improve, improve or lower your risk of getting COVID at the time of which we thought it was a very difficult disease, and it was, but a lot of good things were done by the public health officer, and I could definitely see myself fulfilling that role in the future.
Mm. Yeah. Well, sounds like a plan. Um, and I guess like so did you like change your major at all in your bachelor's?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I was a tour guide and we had to learn these statistics all the time, like how often do you change your majors in college? And I always told people like, oh, you might change your major 6 times in college, but
Mhm.
I only ever changed it once, honestly. As soon as I started off in college as a biology major, it's a really, really bland major, but no one in my family had ever gone to a 4-year university off the bat. And so I was really confused and did not know what to do. There was no hand holding, unfortunately, but it was a lot of opportunity to learn. So I appreciated that. I started off with a biology major though, and I really liked it at first. And then when I got into COVID, it changed because we were starting to take these upper division courseworks of things that I wasn't really interested at the time. Davis is a really, is a powerhouse in terms of ecology, evolution, that sort of aspect of biology, but I wasn't really interested in that side, as far as, learning about your basic level skills in ecology and evolution. And so that's where I decided to change my major because a lot of the courses I felt I was going to take at that point weren't really applicable to what I wanted to do. And, if you don't have a general interest in something or you feel like you're not being fulfilled, then, I definitely was like, I want to change my major to something I'm more interested in. And at the time, neurobiology was a really interesting field that I was looking at. I'd taken a couple of courses with some professors, and honestly, I could say that it was a good decision because I was really challenged, and that's part of the reason I think part of what I feel like kids who are applying for college now and choosing their majors are doing. I really think that they should go for something that one just doesn't look good on paper. It doesn't matter what you major in; you're gonna get a career in whatever you want. You just have to be able to apply it. But I really think that it's more get something that challenges you, something that you really are interested in, aside from just doing well on a test, and whether that be the MCAT or the LSAT, something like that. I've met people who are English majors in medical school now, and I'm like, you can really do what you want. So that was my whole end goal, and neurobio was what I was interested in. It challenged me.
Mhm.
One of the worst grades I got in a class at Davis was in a neurobiology course, specifically neurobiology of addictive drugs. And I can honestly say I learned the most from that class. I
Mhm.
learned not only the concepts of the course, but I also learned how to study better, how to be a better student. So it's when you're challenged most that I feel like you're really able to grow as a person. That was super valuable.
And you mentioned that like you feel like you've been like a student most of your life.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess like eventually there's gonna come a point where I guess you feel, or I guess you're just gonna be like, thrown into I guess the working world. And I think learning like happens constantly, but I don't know, do you think at some point there'll be, or is you'll reach a point where you feel like you're satisfied with the learning you've done?
No, no, I don't. That's a great question. I think like what I've learned from mentors is this: the learning never stops. Like even when I think I've learned it all, or I can't even say that. Even when I think that I've had difficulty learning something new, I know that something more difficult is going to come my way, and so I don't think the learning will ever stop there. Or that I'll ever be comfortable, when I'm done learning something. If I, say I'm done with school and everything, I don't think that I will be completely fulfilled still. I thrive, where I work in teams, because I like when I'm able to bounce off ideas from other people and get these different perspectives, learn something new from what someone else has to say. I value that a lot, and I still see those as learning opportunities.
Mhm.
But it's yes, I'll be happy when I'm done with school for sure. Like, not knowing that I won't ever have to turn in an assignment on R, that'll be the most valuable thing ever. But I think there'll be more different applications of learning that I've still yet to
Mhm.
experience for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think that the education you're doing now is definitely going to only help you and to help you to learn more. Um,
Yeah.
and so I guess you also mentioned, your programs helped you get, like research experience. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I just want to, ask you to elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually work with a lot of undergrads right now too who ask me similar things. A lot of them are first years or second years of Berkeley, and they're sort of confused on how to get their foot in the door in research.
Mhm.
I was in that same position literally for like 3 years straight. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know how to do it exactly. And so getting your foot in the door in research really involves a lot of cold calling, and I'm sorry, not cold calling, more so cold
Mhm.
emailing, I should
Yeah.
say. Um, being comfortable with not hearing anything for weeks at a time, being comfortable with applying for literally. I remember at a time I had a Google spreadsheet of like different labs that I wanted to join in college, and I'd reached out, and then COVID threw everything in again in a whirlwind. But when it came time for grad school, I was really happy that I had an extra opportunity to get myself involved more in research,
Mhm.
because I was really comfortable with cold emailing. I was comfortable with putting my foot in the door in places that I feel like I'd earned my way to get into. And so it just involved a lot of searching, seeing things that interested me. And so right now I'm actually working. I'm working too as a clinical research coordinator at UCSF, and so that involved literally applying for so many jobs, reaching out, reading abstracts of professors or potential researchers that I would be interested in collaborating with.
Mhm.
So it just took a long time, but that's not to say that there's not an opportunity for people out there. It's more so you have to be patient. and you have to be willing to look for something. You have to be passionate about something too. Like I remember one of my the jobs I applied to. I got the job, but I remember I had the interview the day I was supposed to travel back home for a holiday,
Mm.
and so I ended up doing my interview in the car on the side of the road. Um, I got the job, and so I was like, wow, win-win. So that goes to show, what kind of passion you put into speaking about doesn't matter, how you sort of portray yourself, I guess, and the background being all noisy and things like that. So, are you passionate about this? Are you at least interested in what's being done? So I was really thankful for those opportunities that popped up along the way. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, no, that was great. It'd also be great if I could hear just like about, I guess, just like, what you're, actually involved in and just kind of like, um, you mentioned like your clinical research coordinator, like, I guess, um,
Yeah.
yeah, what are you guys like doing there?
Yeah, for sure. So right now I'm working in the Department of Anesthesiology and Perioperative Care at UCSF. I'm working with a anesthesiologist right now, and we're in the process of taking these qualitative studies and turning them to be more quantitative. And so
Mm,
it's a new role for me. It's a new role for my PI, my principal investigator. She's a researcher who's literally going from fellowship to sort of becoming a PI. And so I think we're both learning, which I value a lot. I work really, like I said, I work best with these teams, who are bouncing ideas off each other.
mm,
And so specifically, her project has been describing the qualitative aspects of cataract care and sort of improving the efficiency around it, developing health policy that really gets rid of these outdated procedures, one of them being monitored anesthesia care. And so before I came in, her and the previous CRC had been doing research qualitatively with ophthalmologists and anesthesiologists, as well as patients, getting their input, getting these surveys and providing them, questions on what they thought about their cataract surgery approaches. How comfortable are the anesthesiologists with performing cataract surgery under monitored anesthesia care, meaning like this one-to-one, hey, we got an anesthesiologist, like administering, fentanyl and midazolam on you, watching you 24/7, looking at your vitals, versus taking some sort of oral anxiolytic, like Xanax, just to make sure that you're comfortable doing the surgery itself. Because in reality, cataract surgery is this, I would say, non-invasive procedure.
mm,
It's more so, it can be done as a simple outpatient procedure in office. And so at UCSF specifically, it's still being done, in the whole operating room thing. It doesn't need to be like that. Other countries, um, with more standardized healthcare systems, think Canada, think the UK, Norway, these countries already have it set up so that they really don't need that highly intensive care. Rather, they can just have this oral anxiolytic, give them the Xanax, make them feel comfortable, but it's not something that needs to take a long time. It's not something that needs to have all these negative risks for the patient themselves. Like you don't want to get stuck by some sort of needle if you don't need to.
yeah.
So that's what the surgery, the research going into now. So now the research is moving from that idea of, hey, here in the US, how can we shift our ideas from making it really costly, making it really intense and highly risks, a lot of risks for the patient, and instead make it a lot easier and more simple, rather just giving them some Xanax and making sure that you can improve the procedure out or keep the outcomes the same, but improve in efficiency all the while, respecting the patient, all their values. So it's pretty good. We're now in the process of designing a pilot clinical trial. And so a lot of that's in the works, we're having to work. My job really involves working with the Institutional Review Board at UCSF, communicating ideas about patient safety.
Mm,
How can we maximize the benefit to the patient all the while reducing the risk to them during this study?
yeah.
I wouldn't even say it's like we're not, changing how the cataract surgery procedure is done. We're not changing any of the risks of that surgery. We're not changing, who's watching over the patient. The only thing we're changing is just going to be the drug that they're given to sedate them. And so that's what we're in the steps of doing right now. We hope to have an IRB submitted at the end of this month, and we'll hear back on it hopefully in time to start a clinical trial, a pilot of about 10 patients in March. And then starting next year, we hope, it's a hope of my PI too, that she'd be interested in doing some sort of multi-center approach where you like are able to collaborate with not only UCSF but maybe like UCLA or some schools over on the East Coast too. That way, we can really get you can make this applicable to the entire US population and not just those in the Bay Area. Pretty cool. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot of it's really cool because like a lot of my degree focuses on designing these things like epidemiology and biostatistics. And so being able to like put my biology lens on and also be able to put on my epi lens, it's super, super fun. Yeah, it's awesome work.
Yeah, I mean, definitely sounds really cool. And yeah, I mean, the way you're explaining it sounds like you're really passionate and interested in it. Um, and I guess well, so you mentioned like collaboration and communication a little bit, and I mean, I think um that's probably definitely been fostered by the classes you've taken. And I think also just kind of I've heard people like take kind of like a cynical approach to like the world, and like it's a dog eat dog world and everyone's just kind of out for themselves.
Mhm.
And I think especially in the sciences, and biology in specific, and medicine, I think that just kind of model of like the world doesn't really like apply insofar as like medical advancement doesn't happen without collaboration. And I was like, I don't know, I was wondering what you thought about that.
That's a really good question. Like you bring up some good points, especially about how do you collaborate even first in science, how
Mhm.
has it been done? And so in the past, it seems as though a lot of collaboration happened on this more um, local level. And it wasn't like until you got these big journal names, you got Lancet, you got, NCBI literally compiling everything that you need.
Mhm.
But what's making the conversation a little bit more difficult now is I wouldn't even say it's regulation. I think it's more so who you're letting in to do the science in the first place. So how inclusive are you to the people that you're actually trying to apply these studies that you're working on for? If I have this article, that's some of the work that I'm doing now is like if I have this new novel drug and I'm able to like show that this drug is highly effective in treating this condition, how can I help other scientists, replicate these results and, improve upon the process that I did it.
Mhm.
That's where it becomes difficult because you're like sort of, I don't want to say it's like safeguarding medicine now at this point or safeguarding science, but science is getting really expensive to the point where it's not really being as transparent as I'd like it to be. You bring up a good point about like there's a cynical view in that it's a dog eat or dog eat world, right? Um, that's I don't want to say it's true because I definitely don't have enough experience to even say that. I can just say from my perspective, it's been like you just have to first know your audience very well, and then you also have to, of course, have the connections to even get your point across. But a lot of people now decide like what is meaningful to even put out there in the journal. That's like some it's like some sort of bias that we have, like this desirability to publish only what we want. It's in epi you call that publication bias. We're only going to publish what we think the reader will value, what the journal will value, what will actually get some money or potentially lead to some future grants. And so that's causing a lot of problems, I think, in terms of peer review. It's not paid very well. It's not the research, while meaningful to the researchers, is might not be so available to everyone. Like if I'm a patient enrolled in a clinical trial and I want to learn more about my condition, and it turns out someone else has done some studies on that, but I get hit with a paywall, that necessarily makes it really hard for the patient to get that information from another source. So I think the way science goes is it's improving for sure. There's a lot of regulations that have made science much more diverse, much more standardized, but there's also room for improvement when it comes to how can you improve the experience overall for everyone. And I think it's going in the right direction. So I have high hopes.
Well, yeah, sounds inspiring. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think we're just about like wrapping up. So I'll just like throw my last question, but you kind of touched on this a little earlier. Um, but I guess I'll just ask you to reiterate, I guess. just, like what's kind of one piece of advice you'd give to high schoolers or, undergrads or just anyone really who's interested in just, I guess, making their way in epidemiology, bio, just pretty much anything you can speak to.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I'm really glad you bring that up because right now I'm actually acting as like this mentor for high school students who are applying back home in the Valley. I'm trying to get them into these awesome programs, like these pipeline programs that I think they would be really valuable for them. And one thing I'm always telling them is um, when you go to college, when you're picking your major, and when you're thinking about like what your end goals are, like we all have in mind, like if you're pre-med, I have to do research, I have to volunteer, I have to do X, Y, and Z. It's so choreographed, and I think it's I don't want to say it's just it feels um it feels really indifferent, and it feels more so like not the person who don't be the person that you don't want to be,
Mm,
just because you think it'll look good for the future. Do the things that really interest you whenever you're at that point in college. Like that's what I did. I found myself like applying for programs that I was like, I applied for a policy program in college and I did that for a bit, advocating for like keeping tuition down in UCs. And it's totally not even related to what I was interested in, but I was just interested in doing it because it was like, oh, it sounded interesting at the time. It had real world implications. I was like, that sounds like a lot of fun. So I did it. Being a tour guide in college, I did that at Davis. I did it at Berkeley. Definitely not related to what I want to
mm,
do in the future. But I was like, you know what? That sounds like a fun gig. Um, did it take up some of my time? Yeah, it did. But it also made college a lot more meaningful for me. It made it more, I think, just easier to get things done and you didn't even know the time was passing in the first place. So when you're like a high school student and you're thinking to yourself, man, gosh, I really maybe want to go to Harvard because of the name or something, or this, the prestige of it all, the competitiveness of it all, like maybe I'm going to get first in my class.
mm,
That's all good and done. And then when I look back now, I'm like, man, that was weird. It was like save yourself the stress now, live your life in the moment. If you see something that you're interested in, just go for it.
mm.
It's too short. I when I was like 18, I thought I was already old at that point, and now I'm 23, and I'm like, man, if I thought I was old then, I'm really old now. Gosh, um, but I still feel young in the way that there's a lot of opportunity left out there, and that's the mindset I would hope to pass on to a high school student or a college student. Don't be wary of everything. Just go with the flow and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, well, for one, I think that's a great mindset to have. And I think other people should definitely also think in similar ways. And um, yeah, I myself am trying to, for sure. And I think in general, I think that's just kind of like the direction things are going. I mean, I think like that's the whole idea behind, um, intersectionality of fields and, like people aren't just one thing. They're just, to be human is to be whole. And, I think like shoving people into like little boxes here and here, just kind of like, um, I guess like an outdated system.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so
and
boring, right?
yeah, yeah, I know. Such a boring life. And yeah, so I mean, thank you for that advice and thank you again for being on the podcast. It was lovely to have you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. All the best to you and for your future goals. I have high hopes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, good luck to you too. And yeah, have a good night.
Awesome. Thanks. You too. Bye.
All right, great. Bye bye.